The same water bottle.
Not really thirsty, it just helps with the transition. So, my name is Robert Painter, but I'm not a junior, just a namesake. But because of this, one might forgive me for thinking during my young life that I was another dad, or a copy, or a sequel. Dad had no such confusion. He always seemed to know what he was about. He was consistent, calm, and cared about whoever was in front of him. Who was Dad? Well, really, who was anybody? Dr. Raymond Moody says we are not our thoughts and feelings, we are our story. Our story includes all the ripples that we create in the lives of those around us. And I submit that Dad is still here among us and in our stories. And though non-corporeal, he is still unfolding. I have trouble summing up Dad's story in any meaningful way, given the scope of his reach in the service of others. So I will offer up this specific example. As a UConn student, I was pulled over on campus. The officer, upon seeing my driver's license, said, "Are you Dr. Painter's son? Your father saved my aunt's life. He gave us 10 more years with her." That's one guy, one family. And you stretch that over thousands of patients. It's humbling to think that over that time he'd given tens of thousands of years to families to spend with their loved ones. It was very humbling. And that's just him as a surgeon. He also dedicated his time after that to serving people, giving voice to their needs. His obituary hints at some of this. During my teen years, the energy we each brought to the table was different. An example of this contrast was me learning to drive stick shift in Dad's Chevy Cimarron. Cadillac Cimarron. It looked like a Chevy. Sometime after my last date with Kathy Doran, where Dad was both chauffeur and chaperone, Dad and I decided that I should learn to drive his standard shift. This is how that went down. I was driving, Dad was in the back. I did a great job going from the first Pomfret House all the way to Woodstock's busiest intersection, where I stalled. After 4 attempts, I had made it all the way to the middle of the intersection. I was blocking traffic from 3 sides. Outside the car, there was lots of beeping, lots of bleeping, and lots of colorful hand gestures. Inside the car, I was begging for Dad to fix this. He was calmly looking out the window. And he said only one thing, and said it once, without looking at me: "I'm not helping." And that didn't help. Cut to the chase, I successfully got out of the jam. But at the time, my takeaway was that he was an unfeeling robot because I had given it my best hissy fit and he was unfazed. I realized years later that he knew that helping wouldn't help. I was selling myself short and he wasn't having it. To help would have deprived me of my agency, being able to take responsibility for myself and my own development. He wanted me to learn from the experience, not just get a participation trophy. Despite our contrast in temperament, Dad and I share other characteristics, but mostly a sense of humor. There were many pun battles, which he always won, having the last pun. Dad, just let me say, you never made us earn our keep, but we will now keep your urn. office. Dad would do tricks, like take his cloth napkin and stand it up out of his clenched fist. Or swimming, doing the crawl, doing all the right motions, but not going anywhere. He didn't move forward at all. I asked him a year ago how he did this, and he said it's just a matter of moving in a certain way. My favorite trick was the shirt trick. If this had been a cool weather funeral, you would have got a demonstration. It does not work that way with a vest. Anyway, the shirt trick he showed me about 2 years before this story takes place. There was a cool weather gathering at the first Pontra house. I was wearing a sweater over a button-down shirt. About halfway through the evening, I found Dad and genius family friend, the late Steve Murdoch, talking in the back room. I should say that Steve's job was to go to other people's processes and suggest to them better ways of doing it, more efficient. Very, very gifted guy. So anyway, they're talking in the back room. And about halfway, or 5 minutes into the conversation, I noticed I had Dad's attention, and I undid my top collar button. And then, when I noticed I had Steve's attention, I elaborately undid my cuff buttons. And then I turned to Dad and said, "It's warm in here." And he said, "Let me help you." I bent over, arms straight at my sides, and with both hands he grabbed the back collar of my shirt and ripped it off from underneath my sweater and handed it back to me. And then we looked at Steve. Steve looked at each of us and then went to his ponder place. And that's how I left him. Now, I didn't set this up with Dad ahead of time. The only clue he got was unbuttoning the collar. There had been no mention of this trick for 2 years. No practicing it, no nothing. I did not reveal the secret to Steve, and I'm pretty sure Dad didn't reveal the secret either. But I wouldn't be surprised if Steve came up to him later and said, "I figured out your shirt trick, and here's 3 better ways of doing it." Some of you may not know about the many newspaper clippings of articles about Dad that his mother sent us. I bet Dad has more mentions in print than all of us here combined. Probably not. I was through the receiving line. There were articles about seemingly everything he did. Grandma knew which papers would have his articles when, and she acquired enough of these papers to send clippings to everybody. When I imagined what that process might have looked like, ridiculous images come to mind of a dining room table strewn with piles of newspapers and individual piles of neatly clipped articles for grandchildren and family. It also brings to mind the ridiculous notion that she was calling these stories into the newspaper herself. How would she know? A fond early memory was when my younger brother and I were small, we played D-Donk. You remember D-Donk? Each of us would sit on a foot, arms wrapped around his legs, and he would walk around the house going, D-Donk, D-Donk, all around the house. I enjoyed the overnight traveling to visit family. Since I couldn't sleep in the car, I would keep Dad company as we listened to the Eagles' greatest hits and Bob Seger. Dad would talk to truckers on CB radio using the handle Blue Strawberry. Now, for those of you that are born this century, a handle is like a screen name on the radio. Do I need to explain radio? I recall Dad was always being relaxed when in Pomfret, tending his garden, fruit trees, and trying his hand at building a cob pizza oven. He was really the country mouse to Nancy's city mouse. A month ago, while reminiscing with Dad and Nancy in Hartford, I was happy to hear him say, Nancy, we had a pretty good run, didn't we? About a year ago, I asked Dad if he could do anything differently. What is it and what would he change? And without hesitation, he said nothing. He said, quote, nothing. I think that is because he was always in the moment. He was always consistent in his response to whatever life threw at him. I believe his lack of a regret is part of Dad's wisdom, giving each moment its due. And wisdom is like the driving lesson or the trick swimming, and that it can't be imparted just like knowledge. Knowledge must be combined with the experience in order for wisdom to arise. Dad, I'm sorry that I thought you could dispense wisdom. Make me smarter, please. One of the things that he had hoped for his kids is that we would be nice to people. Nice, not just polite. But what is the difference between nice and polite? A Cherokee tale helps me here. There are two wolves, and they are always fighting. One is made of light and hope. The other is made of darkness and despair. Which one wins? Whichever one you feed. That means to whichever one you give your energy. The tale says that we affect the world by more than just our words and actions. Our intentions, our feelings, dare say spiritual emissions, affect the world around us. Being nice to people is feeding the light wolf with joy in your heart. Being merely polite is a checkbox. Dad fed the light wolf. Shortly after Dad asked me to do this eulogy, I asked him what he thought happens to you after you die. And he answered, me? Nothing. Dad was not religious. He left each of us to find our own spirituality. Though he wasn't spiritual, he respected and supported those who are. Dad respected our free will and sovereignty. Free will is necessary for development. Dad preserved my free will during the driving lesson. Dad preserved my sovereignty in allowing me to find my own spiritual path. It is said that there are many paths up Mount Fuji, or path to God. I imagine Dad as being like a wise man by the side of the path, not climbing Mount Fuji for himself, but encouraging and supporting people on their journey up the mountain. He said, be nice to people, which is the golden rule. It took me a long time to realize that I shouldn't try to be like him. I should try to be the best me. Upon reflection this year, I find that Dad's expectations of me, be nice to people, find joy in what you do, and give it your best, is a serviceable template for what God's expectations of me might be. In closing, I will share a letter that I wrote to Dad after his passing. Dear Dad, I remember the first time coming home from college, you offered me coffee in the morning for the first time. You were just handing me a cup of black coffee, but it registered as a rite of passage, like I had been blessed into adulthood by the sacred drink of coffee offered by the Father. You said when you were young that a proof of God was seeing the sun rays stream through dark clouds. I will always think of you when I see that. I appreciate our Wellington pizza lunches and working on the Nova together. I remember you telling the story of breaking up with a woman, a short woman you felt it was important to include prior to the start of your residency. You were doing her a kindness as your residency would dominate your time and energy. You told us you broke up with her and then walked her home. And I said, dee-dunk. And you chuckled. Working the Woodstock Fair chicken barbecue was the highlight of my summer. Being part of that smell wafting across the fairgrounds was epic. If you've been there, you know. Thank you for introducing me to euchre, my second favorite card game. I remember when we were teaching Becca how to play euchre, you were Becca's partner, and you went off the rails bidding 12 tricks. For those of you unfamiliar with euchre, the odds of pulling that off, according to Google, is a small fraction of 1%. You didn't pull it off. But to be fair, you and Becca mopped the floor with me and Nancy in the last game we played. Thank you for being my dad. Thank you for being you, consistently, always. No matter what was going on in my life, you were always a calm, constant lighthouse and touchstone. You did have a great run, with no regrets, no fear of death, a serviceable template indeed. As I move from mourning you to missing you, I find comfort in your last words to me. You shared an experience that you were having as I sat with you on your bed, holding your hand. Eyes closed, you asked me, "What's that bell?" I said, "I don't hear a bell." And thinking better of it, "Is it loud?" You said, "Yes." I asked, "What sort of bell is it?" And before going back to sleep, you said, church bell. So thank you all for being here and watching the stream. And Dad has passed, but his story still unfolds through all of us. Thank you.